Okay, we are live. Okay. Bună ziua, doamnelor și domnilor. Bine ați venit și revenit la cea de-a 7-a ediție a Festivalului Internațional de Carte Transilvania. Continuăm seria Întâlnirilor FICT cu invitații speciali la ediția de anul acesta. Și avem deosebită plăcere și onoare și bucurie de a ne întâlni, cel puțin pe mediul online, dar live, cu o autoare cu totul și cu totul deosebită și minunată. Este vorba de Lotta ELSTAD, autor și jurnalist norvegian din Oslo, cu o carte care pe mine m-a cucerit din prima, Refuz să gândesc, apărută la Casa Cărții de Știință, se găsește în cadrul festivalului. Cartea este tradusă de doamna Ana Suărășan. Bună ziua doamna Ana, bună ziua Sanda Tomescu.
Bună ziua!
Doamna profesoară care ne onorează ca de fiecare dată cu întâlniri extraordinare și ne intermediază, iată, să cunoaștem și ne ajută să cunoaștem literatura norvegiană și ne-a propus de fiecare dată autori care mai deosebiți și mai minunați. Astăzi e vorba de Lotta ELSTAD. Hello Lotta, welcome to Transylvania International Book Festival. It's a pleasure and an honor to listen to you, to meet you here, only online, but I think in the future for sure we will invite you to come to Cluj and to meet the Romanian public. I think I will let you ladies to start the dialogue. I will be here because I'm so glad that I'm with three beautiful and amazing ladies.
Thank you. I will start then. Thank you for this introduction, and thank you and all the organizers of the Transylvania Book Festival for the making possible again to bring Norwegian writers to Cluj. It is a great pleasure to meet Lotta for the second time in Cluj-Napoca, but this time digitally. It is with gratitude to the Norwegian literature abroad that Romanian readers can enjoy the first translation into Romanian of one of your novels, I Refuse to Think. Back in 2018, on behalf of NURLA's development program for new literary talents, new voices, students and translators enjoyed your presence at a literary translation workshop at the Department of Scandinavian Languages, where the object of study was translating a chapter of I Refuse to Think. And now, as a consequence, your novel, Jeg nekter å tenke, I Refuse to Think, translated from Norwegian into Romanian by a former student of Norwegian, Ana Suărășan, is launched at the Nordica collection of the Casa Cărții de Știință publishing house in your wonderful presence. The translation appeared again with the support of NURLA. So welcome back to Cluj, Lotta.
Thank you very much, Sanda. I'm very happy to be here too.
If I can present you in very, very short for the public, I would say that your career as a novelist comprises several novels. Of course, I Refuse to Think that you know, and the novel Ett rum Sleiligheden, The Studio Apartment, 2012, and Ett eget rum, A Room of One's Own, from 2014. But besides the success of a fictional writer, Lotta ELSTAD wrote non-fictional books as well. The debut in 2008 and so-called drittjob, a so-called shit job, discloses aspects of the hotel industry in Norway, the journalist having employed herself in this sector. In addition to the engagement as a journalist, it's remarkable to see non-fictional books like Community Works 2013 and the Spanish sensation Podemos, and How to Do Left-Wing Populist in Times of Crisis from 2015. So your activity is so comprising, and you are very much appreciated abroad. Many of your books have been sold, the rights have been sold to several countries in Europe, and now in Romanian as well for the first time. I would like to invite you today to say a couple of words about you, in addition to what I have very modestly presented here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanda. As I said, I'm very happy to again be in Cluj, even though I am only able to be present online. But I enjoyed very much visiting. It was 3 years ago, I think,
yes,
2018.
Yes, 2018, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's always difficult to just talk about, say a few words about yourself, but I mean, I can say that right now I'm in my apartment in Oslo, and I grew up in this city. My mother is Swedish and my father is Norwegian, and I've always lived in Oslo. I lived a couple of years in Spain as well, as an adult, and I've basically been working as a journalist on and off since I was 20, maybe. So I've been writing in some sense or another for almost half my life, I would say. And my first novel came when I was in my 20s, and it was quite a shock at that point, because it became a bit more media attention on that book than I was prepared for in that age. And so I took some years and started writing again in 2012 when the first novel came out. And so yeah, and I live with this typical writer's life, not having this bestseller economy. So I work now as a journalist as well, and try always to get space and time to write and continue with my authorship that I started.
Thank you. And we, the public here, we are also very curious to hear from you what triggered your writing career, actually.
That's actually a good question. I think it's always been there. I didn't really have a very clear sense that I wanted to be an author or something when I was a child. But I guess I was very influenced by my brother is also an author, and he's written lots of books here in Norwegian, and I guess it's sort of been in the family somehow that writing is something you can do, and writing is something it's a way of sort of being in a dialogue with the world, I guess. And so that's one part that when I went to my mother's attic some years ago, I was trying to clean up her place, and then I found that I actually wrote this little novel when I was 10 years old. It was about some children being detectives and wanting to catch thieves. This type of little book. And so I guess it's always been something that I enjoy, and I don't mind the sort of isolation that you sometimes have to have as a writer. And so that's also part of my personality, that I can enjoy being by myself, just going into this inner space, I guess. And always when I have these periods when I don't write, then I feel an urge that I want to express myself. So there's not one thing that triggered it, but
yeah, so it's a natural way of being, actually. And connected to this, where do you draw your inspiration from? And now I would like to speak also about the novel, I Refuse to Think, and also comment on the title, maybe.
You want me to speak of it?
Yes, about where you draw your inspiration.
Okay, yeah, for this book. Yeah.
Yes, mostly in connection to this novel.
Yeah. So, as I said, I mean, I am a journalist, and so I guess my novels in many ways are influenced by this way of thinking and engaging in the world. That's I'm interested in political topics and the society, and I remember I was seeing Isabel Allende many years ago. She was visiting Oslo, and I saw her at this event, and she used to work as a journalist as well, and she said that the moment she started fabricating her stories, then she realized that she had to write fiction. And I have never fabricated a news story, but I certainly felt the urge that I sort of wanted to manipulate maybe the reality a little bit. And of course, you cannot do this as a reporter or a journalist or not a researcher, but the fiction universe is the only place where you can do it. And so to come back to the book, I Refuse to Think, I guess there are three things that influenced or sort of triggered me to wanting to write about this. And the first thing was, I mean, this is a book that many people would say that it is about abortion and about this specific women's rights topic, but I would start maybe at another point in saying that it is a book about neoliberalism and about maybe precarious work and being not really successful in the job market, if you could say it like this. There are three words that is like keywords. I could say that describes the book, which is temporarity. So Hedda, which is the main character, she has a temporary job, she has a temporary place to live, she has a temporary boyfriend. Nothing is really permanent, and this way of living is sort of paralyzing her and not really making her able to plan her future, and also makes, of course, this pregnancy, even though she is in her 30s and she is a capable person, but it makes her especially vulnerable when she is in this situation and she is very paralyzed and doesn't really know how to handle it. So this is one thing. It's more about what we can see in Europe, not so much in Norway as in other countries, but that there is lots of precarity in the job market, and especially for young people, for example. So that is one starting point. And also in my novel, this is sort of a caricature because it's not really Norway. It is a caricature of it, but it's similar to how Norway has developed politically, but not really this far. So that's one inspiration. The other thing is, I think it was in 2016 when Poland, at least the proposition of totally ban abortion in Poland came, and I was a reporter in Poland then, writing about this, and I heard that historically it's very interesting because in Poland abortion was it was a pro-choice country during communism, and Scandinavian women, because it wasn't legal in Scandinavia, they went to Poland in the 1970s to have an abortion. And now this has changed, and Polish women go to Germany, for example, to have abortions instead. So it was interesting for me to see how this thing that we can take for granted can change totally, and that you could sort of lose something that you, a right that you think is obvious to have. The same year, the Christian Party of Norway, which is called KrF, came with the proposal saying that women should have 3 days to think before they actually make the decision to have an abortion or not. And this was anonymously denied by all the other parties. So it was never introduced, except for in my novel. And I thought that this was an interesting, it's an interesting proposal because it sort of implies that thinking about something makes you do the right choice. And I'm not really sure if I agree on that. I made this character Hedda, which is basically an overthinker and not really is using these days in a useful way at all. And so this is more like the philosophical part of it, which is what are thoughts and what do they do with you and are they really useful for you? Which I guess metacognitive therapists or something can say a lot about, but it is also a sort of easy way to write a character novel with these. I mean, that is what a novel is usually, is they go into a character's mind and so that was my way of.
It's very, very interesting because it can be also a dystopian novel in this respect. What would happen then? And since you brought up this motive actually from the book, because there are several lines and several motives in your book, I would like to invite you to read 2 pages from your novel, and then Anna, in Norwegian, I would like to read, and then Anna will read the translation into Romanian that she made so well, in order for the public to get acquainted to the atmosphere and get into the novel and read it later. Varsågod.
Tingene mine har fortsatt på avveie i Hellas. På vei til Markveien legesenter denne torsdagen ringer jeg til Athens internasjonale lufthavn for å etterlyse trillebagen min. Jeg sier at den antagelig ligger på et hittekontor et sted, selv om jeg vet faktisk ikke, fordi dere har ikke svart på e-postene mine, men telefonvakten bryr seg fint lite. Heller ikke på mitt jamrende «jeg vil ha livet mitt tilbake» gidder han å grynte mer enn at flyplassen har vært i streik siden hele industrien ble solgt til et tysk firma. Han sier bare livet ditt, på en sur og ubehjelpelig engelsk. Vi vil ha landet vårt tilbake, og legge på. Og jeg forbanner ham. Forbanner ham mens jeg går forbi kaféen med sykler i taket. Forbanner køen som står utenfor, at noen har notert på Instagram at det finnes frykende ferske smultringer der inne, at de snakker om pop-ups og startups og kick-offs, at de er i tidlig 20-åra og aner ikke hvordan det føles å grille i park, sole seg toppløs, eller sitte på barkrakke med Kika mens man tenner seg en røyk. Han som er forbi. Oslo 2016. Alt jeg har likt å gjøre enten blitt umulig, moralsk forkastelig eller ulovlig. Nå skules det stygt på en. Nå har jeg stumpet for lengst, som en investering i kroppen, slik helsearbeiderne sier det med økonomenes ord. Og det nettopp i kroppens æren, og så den vil jeg ha tilbake, at jeg nå setter meg ned på legens kontor. Da jeg nok en gang ble minnet om en svunnen epoke. Tiden da man kunne bestille et svangerskapsavbrudd og henvisning på dagen, og legene garantert var eldre enn deg. I dag mannen, eller bør jeg si pjokken som sitter vis-à-vis meg her ved kontorpulten, knapt fylt 30, og likevel oser han av en selvtillit som bare en kropp i en legefrakk kan gjøre. Han sier, kall meg Ole Morten. Jeg har ikke lyst til å kalle legen Ole Morten. Ole Morten høres ut som han femteklassingen som løp hyperaktivt rundt, tråkket på oppvaskmaskindøra og fikk den veltet over seg heimkunnskapstimen i 1995. Han høres ut som en middelmådig handelsgymnasiast, som trekker fram perspektivmeldingen på fest og bruker eldrebølgen som unnskyldning for sin totale utradering av sivilisasjonen. Typen som kan finne på å si at statsministeren sa mye fornuftig på det og det debattprogrammet i går. Han ikke et menneske i hvis hender jeg vil legge min skjebne. Men jeg bøyer meg for kutymen. nikker og svarer noenlunde informativt på spørsmålet hans. Første dag for siste menstruasjon. Symptomer? Definitivt. Jeg tisser hele tiden, og puppene mine har blitt gigantiske. Og etter å ha regnet ut at jeg er omtrent 1 måned på vei, beskriver han alt jeg har i vente. Konsultasjon hver 6. uke, ultralyd den 18., og ta med deg en urinprøve neste gang. Det er da jeg avbryter ham. Takk, men jeg er egentlig her for å gjøre kort prosess. Ole Morten ser på meg, smiler, fører fingrene gjennom den mellombåndsveisen sin, og jeg klarer ikke å plassere ham. Klønete og omsorgsfull, på grensa til paternalistisk, bare eplekjekk, eller en kristen fundamentalist utkledde helsevesenets neutralitet. Da han opplyser meg om at det finnes ingenting som heter kort prosess lenger. Kort prosess ble forhandlet bort i fjor.
Tusen takk. Og nå ber jeg Ana.
Da. Lucrurile mele sunt încă rătăcite prin Grecia. Joia asta, pe drum spre centrul medical Mark Veen, sun la aeroportul internațional din Atena, încercând să-mi recuperez bagajul. Mă gândesc că probabil e undeva printr-un birou de obiecte pierdute, deși de fapt nu știu, pentru că nu ați răspuns la e-mail-urile mele, dar telefonistului puțin îi pasă de asta. Nici măcar atunci când mă răstesc, îmi vreau viața înapoi, nu se deranjează mai mult decât să mormâie că aeroportul e tot în grevă de când toată industria a fost vândută unei companii nemțești. Zice doar, viața ta? Într-o engleză arțăgoasă și incompetentă. Noi ne vrem țara înapoi și mi închide. Iar eu îl blestem. Îl blestem în timp ce trec pe lângă cafenele cu biciclete pe acoperiș. Blestem coada de la intrare. Cineva a postat pe Insta că acolo înăuntru se găsești gogoși proaspete și calde. Că toți vorbesc de pop-up-uri și de startup-uri și de kick-off-uri, că au vreo 20 de ani și habar n-au ce e ăla un grătar în parc, să stai la soare tople sau să stai la bar cu Kika în timp ce ți-a prins o țigară. Vremea aceea a trecut. Oslo 2016. Tot ce-mi plăcea să fac a devenit fie imposibil, fie imoral, fie ilegal. Acum toată lumea se uită urât la mine. Acum am împotmolit până peste cap pentru o investiție în corp, după cum spun medicii prin cuvintele economiștilor, și tocmai în interesul corpului, pe care de asemenea îl vreau înapoi, mă așez acum în cabinetul doctorului. Acolo mi-amintesc din nou de o epocă de mult apusă. Perioada în care puteai comanda o întrerupere de sarcină, primeai consultația în ziua respectivă, iar medicii erau garantat mai în vârstă decât tine. Astăzi bărbatul, sau ar trebui să spun băiatul, care stă la birou în fața mea, abia dacă are 30 de ani și totuși răspândește în jur atâta încredere în sine, precum doar un corp de om în halat alb ar putea să o facă. Îmi zice, spune-mi Ole Morten. Nu am chef să-i spun medicului Ole Morten. Ole Morten sună de parcă ar fi cel de-al 5-lea elev care, alergând hiperactiv prin jur, a călcat pe ușa mașinii de spălat vase și a făcut-o să se restoarnă peste el la lecția de tehnologie din 1995. Pare un elev mediocru la un liceu cu profil de comerț care vorbește de mesajele Ministerului de Finanțe la chefuri și folosește îmbătrânirea populației ca scuză pentru anihilarea totală a civilizației. Genul care s-ar putea gândi să spună că premierul a avut mult sens în această privință și în dezbaterea de ieri. Nu este omul în mâinile căruia aș vrea să-mi pun soarta. Dar mă supun conform obiceiului. Dau din cap și răspund oarecum informativ la întrebările sale. Prima zi a ultimei menstruații? Simptome? Cu siguranță fac pipi tot timpul, iar sânii mei s-au făcut gigantici. Și după ce și-a dat seama că sunt cam în a 4-a săptămână, începe să-mi descrie tot ce urmează. Control la fiecare 6 săptămâni, ecografie în a 18-a și, data viitoare, să aduceți o mostră de urină. În momentul ăsta îl întrerup. Mulțumesc, dar eu sunt de fapt aici pentru procedura scurtă. Ole Morten mă privește, zâmbește, își trece degetele prin freza sa semi-blondă și nu reușesc nici cum să le etichetez. Un grijuliu stângaci, la granița paternalismului, doar un tupei sau un fundamentalist creștin îmbrăcat în neutralitatea sistemului sanitar? Când mă informează că nu mai există nimic de genul procedură scurtă. Procedura scurtă s-a interzis anul trecut.
Thank you very much, Ana, for the translation, which gives a hint to the readers, to the future readers, about the novel. And I would like now to invite you, Ana, to ask a question to our guest.
Thank you. So firstly, I would like to say that I really enjoyed reading and translating your novel, Lotta. And I believe that one element that makes it so special is the amount of various cultural, philosophical, political, and all several intellectual references together with the subtext. And I am curious, was there any intentional reference to Hedda Gabler or to powerful Ibsenian female characters through the main character of the novel, Hedda?
Absolutely.
Yes? Okay. Tell us more, please.
So I don't know if I don't remember if there were any other Ibsen characters that, but it was certainly, or it was certainly Hedda Gabler was a point of reference for me when I wrote this, and the reason for this is many, in many different ways. For one thing, Hedda Gabler is, I don't really know if it's discussed so much. And now I'm just taking it for granted that people know about Hedda Gabler, but it's one of the most famous female characters of the Norwegian author Henrik Ibsen from the 19th century. And so Hedda Gabler is actually pregnant in this novel or in this play. And so, but that is not something that is not so much a theme when people discuss Hedda. So one thing is obviously the name, Hedda Gabler and Hedda Möller, they're quite close. And the other thing is how Hedda Gabler is navigating these two men in her her husband that she finds very annoying. Who always says, in Norwegian, he always says, like, think that, Hedda, think that. And he has like this sort of annoying way of being, and she's very annoyed with him. And Hedda Möller, my Hedda, is also very annoyed with her boyfriend or the man that she sort of ends up living with. And there's this other man that is more the intellectual or the person that you as a woman in the 19th century couldn't really realize your own dreams of being a big person, like a big intellectual or a prime minister or anything like that. And so doing this through a man is very important. And I would guess like the big question when it comes to Hedda Gabler is she she is, as I see, the most interesting character of Ibsen because she is ambiguous. And that is why I would say that the main question is Hedda Gabler a woman, sort of a victim of her time? Is she trying to just navigate through this patriarchy and her not so sympathetic character traits? Is it because of this, or is she just simply a bitch that is speculative and using people and so on? And I would guess that we could ask the same questions to my character in this Hedda, today's Hedda. And I also just thought it was a funny thing to do. But yeah.
Lotta,
Yes.
I have a question for you. Do you think in this line, yeah, do you think that that the writers can still influence the society through their characters? Do writers have a responsibility? Do you think you are responsible for your characters?
If I'm responsible for my characters as a moral, as someone we should follow, I mean, I would never recommend anyone to have my Hedda as a role model in any way. So I guess if you really, really, truly ask me this, I would say no. I don't think that you as an author really should have that responsibility. As a human being, you have to have a responsibility to engage in society and fight for justice. That I think. But I think it's totally fine to just want to entertain as an author, for example. And I think that there is some sort of release and in just having a character that is just a mess and just has lots of flaws and someone we can still relate to, and or that is usually the characters I can relate to are the anti-heroes, I guess. And so I don't know if I'm really replying to your specific question, but so this question of having a responsibility is one thing, but the other is if writers have the ability to. I mean, I guess yes, in the sense that everybody who is in the public sphere somehow can influence. I mean, you can influence lots of people with your books, and also just by being a public figure, certainly. So, but that doesn't mean that really happens so much, or it happens in an obvious way. Of course, I don't think there is a before and after this book, for example. Anyway.
Okay, thank you, Ana.
Yes, continuing on this Hedda Gabler note, despite the whole mess, do you think, Lotta, or in what ways do you believe that Hedda Möller could be leading today's women's cause, or at least continuing it on any note?
I think I would call my Hedda an anti-hero. So I would say if I think lots of people and women, and I myself, can relate to her, but in a sense, I would say, if I'm a bit mean to her. I mean, she is a bit passive, self-righteous. She is childish in some way, cynical. She is not a freedom fighter. She is about herself and her career, and she's into makeup and desperately in love with this guy who is obviously not a good boyfriend material. So she is in some way like just a typical woman in this age, and not really very mature. I mean, she's not this protagonist that will save. I don't know. Save. She's not an Amazon. She's not the one to lead the women's liberation of our time. And I think that's okay. And that's the thing that has been criticized for this, because it's. I mean, the tagline, I don't know how it's been presented in Romania, but in Norway was like, oh, this is feminist literature, is a feminist character, and so on. And then many people will really read it, really read the book, and they're like, she's not really a good feminist role model. And I totally agree, and I don't see that as a problem in itself. And I feel that it is wrong if me as a female author, that I sort of have a responsibility to write characters that should be a role model for other women, because we don't expect that from men. For example, Harry Hole, this Jo Nesbø, which is the biggest author, best-selling author in Norway, and his character is drunk and is I mean, there is or Knausgård or whatever. I'm just, this is a bunch of Norwegian authors. This is not something we would ask of a male author, that he has to write a character that we should look up to and think is like some sort of morally
superior or something. So yeah.
I
think that you have already showed this in your novel by picking up the right name, Hedda Möller. It's very ironic to put together a very usual name, common name, Möller, and Hedda, that reminds us of Ibsen. So it's very representative also in the very name of the character. Anna?
Yes, I was going to say also something about this ironical overtones. So if not Hedda itself, what about the ironical authorial self that is hidden in the subtext somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that voice is doing something in that sense. At least I felt it.
Yeah, and that could be. So obviously I'm not really sure if that was a question, but yeah, I can see what you are saying. that it sort of has people can feel that the book sort of has a mission apart from and not really through the protagonist in itself. I'm a bit ambiguous myself to it because, but I mean, yeah. Now I'm getting not really knowing what to say, but I agree with you.
Okay. Then in what other ways do you think that the novel is speaking to or for this generation Y or the millennials generation? That,
yeah.
Yeah.
So
is there any other ways?
Yeah. So
Yes.
one thing is what I said in the beginning about neoliberalism, precarious work, and sort of this idea you could have of being someone, but the labor market and the conditions are not really there for you to do this. And so one of the first things that happens in the novel is that she's already a freelancer, and she's a freelance journalist, and she's not really she doesn't have a permanent position, and she also loses that contract as a freelancer, and she just becomes broker, and she has this maybe facade as a person who has success. She's like probably quite attractive woman in her 30s, and she has a cool job as a journalist and so on, but she doesn't really have any basis to live a normal life. She cannot really choose to have a family or to have so this is one thing is I'm trying to describe a society, or where a society is heading or could be heading, and where it is in many European countries today. So that is one thing. But if you talked also about the more intellectual references and so on, and I would say that there is also an element of that I wanted to explore abortion as a literary metaphor, as a metaphor for, this is a typical thing of I guess Karl Marx and Althusser and many of those revolutionary thinkers use the woman's body, female body, as a metaphor for the revolution. This typical thing of saying that one society is pregnant with the next society, and giving birth is the revolution. And when you have an abortion, then obviously the revolution is not happening, and so you're killing this spark of something maybe good or maybe bad happening. And so I thought that also could be not necessarily a description, but a way of sort of playing with what is really going on in our times. This book is about 2016, which was, you could say, maybe a breaking point in Europe. Or so. This was the year that Donald Trump was elected. It was the year that Brexit happened. I mean, there was, and still like the aftermath of the European crisis. There was something like in the air after the financial crisis in 2008, and then after 2011, when there was lots of demonstrations, the Arabic Spring, Indignados in Spain, Occupy Wall Street in the US, and you probably had your own movement in Romania, I'm not sure. And what really happened with this movement in 2016, there was just like something totally else happening. And maybe we could say it was an aborted revolution, I'm not sure, but I thought it was fun to play with it in this way.
Yes, very interesting, this approach to the woman's body and the aspects of revolution. And I think Anna, who is writing a PhD thesis also on your novel and other feminine voices in Norway, should have to exploit this path, especially since you have presented it here. So if I might take the floor, I would also like to ask you something also connected to some debate that has been going on in Norway for some time regarding the sources of inspiration, namely the autobiographical elements that may exist in an author's writing, and where the boundaries go regarding your own experience, especially because this has been a very debated topic in Scandinavian literature and not only. Thank you.
So yes, I guess you were talking about the debate about reality literature. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a word in English, but it's more or less the direct translation of virkelighetslitteratur, as we speak about it. And that was a trend. I mean, there's always been autobiographical novels through our times, but that was a very big, hyped up trend in Norway for a while. Maybe not so much today, but and this is connected to big names as Karl Ove Knausgård, who wrote Min Kamp, My Struggle, I guess it's in English, and Vigdis Hjorth, who has written a very debated book that is called Arv og Miljø. I don't know the English word for it, which many people have discussed as sort of trespassing or bending these limits or boundaries a bit too much. And so me, myself, I don't really have so much of an opinion about this. I actually am a victim myself of
yes, that's why I'm asking.
because my brother is an author, and he has written an autobiographical novel, and I am suddenly appearing in this novel, and it is a very yeah, I mean, it was fine. People have been through worse things than this, but it was it is uncomfortable, and I totally understand why this is something to discuss as an ethical thing. But I do believe that I mean, there's freedom of expression. We have to allow this, but I personally don't. I'm not really into doing it myself. But when it comes to my novel, I sort of have similar traits as this character. I live in Oslo. I was the same age when I came out with this book that my character is in this book. And I also have been a freelance journalist and so on. So many people have taken it for granted that this is not a biographical book. And I could say that it absolutely is not. But there was always, of course, elements from my own life or from my friend's life or something that is included somehow in a camouflaged way that everybody writes that in a sense. But I actually experienced that. I was at this event, and there was an older Norwegian author who came to me, and he said that he had read my book, and he was like, hey, I read your book, I really enjoyed it, but I think you should get your act together. so he was taking it for granted that I had written a book about myself and my completely messed up life, and I was only able to respond that, I mean, it could be that I should get my act together, but it's not really related to
Very funny how the reception of literature is actually going on in the public. Yeah, the book lives through each reader in another way, in a different way. I would like to ask Anna if you have some things to say.
I have a question for you, Lotta.
Yes.
It's a question about yourself, because we know your book, and I think everybody who will take your book and read, they will like the book. But I will like to ask you a question. It's what's the most important thing in your life?
What is the most important thing in my life?
So
Oh my God. Yeah, it is my family and my friends. That is the most important thing in my life.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I would never sacrifice them
Yes.
in art or anything. So
Mm.
yeah. So I do engage in things outside my own life. I'm interested in society, and I want changes in society, but I'm quite normal in that way, that my family and my friends are the most important.
Lotta,
Mm.
yes, Gabi, please.
no, I'm here.
I see that it's already 14:46, so we start approaching the end of this session.
Time.
But I would like to ask Lotta if you want to say something more before I would try to conclude here.
The only thing I want to say is that I think it's I'm very happy that this book has been translated in Romanian, and I hope that I will be able to travel again soon, and I will see.
We are looking forward to it, and we hope to translate several of your novels to Romanian. And since your voice as a writer and journalist has been appreciated in the Norwegian literature and also abroad, it is a fact that we have witnessed at the International Book Fair in Frankfurt in 2019, where you have been invited and where Norway was the honorary guest, presenting a fabulous and unforgettable concept designed by Nuala. And we hope that you will be back to Cluj and some other Norwegian writers at the wonderful International Book Festival that we are happy to attend, also digitally in these pandemic times. So thank you to the organizers. Thank you, Lotta, for coming to Cluj through the air. And thank you to the translator, Ana. Thank you, Gabi, very much for hosting us today. And I give you the word in order to conclude.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Lotta. It was so beautiful to hear your voice, but because for me it's so important to hear the author's voice and to see his signs and face and lips and everything. And it's amazing to hear you reading, and it was an honor. Really, thank you. The Romanian public is thanking you, and we cannot wait for your next books. So our doors are open. Just come here. You don't have to knock. You are just like home.
Thank you so much, Gabi.
Have a nice day, and let's start to enjoy the sun and reading books. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.